Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Miller. I'm a stroke survivor and grateful recovering alcoholic. Today's topic is helping children cope with a parent's stroke. And I'm mostly going to be focusing on adult children because that's what I have. But I do believe that much of this would apply to children of any age, actually. Of course, it's just the approach of the type of communication that you do. But of course, it all comes down to communication, which is one of my specialties and one of my favorite topics. So, the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because last night, while I was recording, I received a text from my daughter and she asked if I was available. So when I finished recording, I said yes, I was still awake. She actually asked me if I was still awake. I said yes. I just finished recording. She asked if we could talk. So she called me, and I have a way of making her cry, and it's not intentional. But as soon as I say hello, it's like she bursts into tears. It's like she holds on to all of this anxiety and stuff, and then as soon as she hears my voice, she says it just makes her just unload. So it really, after all is said and done, it makes us both laugh, but it happens frequently. I think the answer is don't hold on to it so long, but anyway, she loves her mommy. So she called me and she was just beside herself with sadness. And she kept telling me, I'm so sorry. I just wish you could be back to normal and you would be better. And I'm summarizing because this was a rather lengthy cry she had, which she clearly needed to have that. And I immediately had a response, and my response was really talking to her the way I've been talking to myself. Everything is going to be okay. So I said it's okay. I'm not going to have another stroke. These are the things that were in the forefront of my mind when I first had my stroke, and at the beginning of this year when I declined in my health. So that was my reaction, that I'm not going to have another stroke. And I know that because we checked to make sure that I didn't this year. And I'm mentally healthy and I work hard to be happy and I enjoy my days. I told her that I was scared the first year, but I feel more at peace. And for me to, as I've been doing my research and thinking this through today, I've been thinking about how summarizing everything is okay. My response to her yesterday was a summary of what's going on. And the reason why I had to summarize is because we don't talk about it a lot. Not in detail at least. More along the lines of, how are you feeling? Oh, I'm doing okay. I have this appointment coming up. But I don't talk a lot about how I'm feeling and really how I'm doing mentally because as a parent, I'm trying to protect my kids from dealing with the level of stress and frustration and all of that stuff that I'm going through right now. I'm trying to protect them from that. So I'll talk about it in a little while, but why that is not the right approach. So I learned that, and I'm really glad that this was kickstarted by her call to me last night. So she didn't understand when I had talked to my kids about going on short-term disability and then applying for long-term disability. I guess I had not clearly stated that I was losing my job, that this was, I'm going to be unemployed now. Um, I I can understand that I probably didn't make it clear because I was going through my own grieving. I didn't really accept it or really understand it myself. I was more focused on making sure the logistics were being taken care of than, I don't know, than talking about it and figuring out how to talk about it. So I think what started this feeling of like remorse that she's going through is that I had said something in a text, in the family text, which is her, my boyfriend, my son, and I. I had said something about being unemployed. And so she sent me a message on the side like, I didn't know that you didn't have your job anymore. And and I think I may have mentioned this the other day in the episode, but she realized, once she heard that, um, knowing how much she loved, that I loved my job, she knows I never in a million years would have walked away from that job unless I was very sick, that something was really wrong. And I think that that's really what drove home to her what the severity of what is going on. And she feels sorry for me. So she told me that she texted my son. So my daughter is 22 and my son is getting ready to turn 26 next month. So she sent him a text and asked how he's been feeling. And he told her that he's sad and he's scared. Um, so what are we going to do about this? This is not good. I don't want my kids to be sad and scared and stressed out. Um, and, I've been doing this podcast for 4 months. I talk about them all the time. They're my world. And yet I have not prioritized their recovery. I've been trying to prioritize my own recovery, which I need to do. It's important. But it's just as important that I prioritize their recovery from this life-altering event that happened to our family. So that's what the focus of my research was today. How do I help my children cope with my stroke recovery? So I heard a few things today, listening to some podcasts and some YouTube videos. So I heard things like, I wanted to give examples of what I heard and then maybe give a little ad lib on my thoughts about it. So one thing I heard is, this stroke didn't happen to me, it happened for me. This idea reminded me so much of one of the promises of my sobriety program. So, the sobriety program, Alcoholics Anonymous, has promises, and one of them is it's like a list of promises on the wall. There's like 12 of them, I think. I'm not sure. Sorry for you, people who know better than I do. But one of them says, we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. And that means that as I practice the steps of my sobriety program, that I will start to changed my perspective on my disease, and that instead of everything in my life, I'm a victim and everything has happened to me. And I've talked about a lot about my opinion about saying this happened to me. Um, I would start shifting my mindset to I wouldn't be where I am today had I not been gifted with this being alcoholism, this being a stroke. So I believe that. I do. I believe that, and I've talked about it since the very beginning of this podcast. Is I've said there's something waiting for me on the other side of this. I corrected myself in later episodes to say, uh, it's not that something is waiting for me. There's something already here. I'm living it. And as I continue to practice my program that I have infused my stroke recovery into, I believe wholeheartedly that I will see my stroke as something that happened for me. And what this has to do with my adult children is the more that I can talk to them about my perspective on this and talking to them about I'm not a victim. I'm not sitting here um, being a victim. Some days I feel like it, of course, but I'm a stroke survivor, not a stroke victim. And I need to talk about that with them because from what I heard from my daughter, she sees me as a stroke victim. And I don't want that. I don't want either of my children to see me as something that somebody who's damaged because something happened to them. Um, and that takes a hell of a lot of work to change that mindset for myself, much less convince, believe it so strongly that my children are convinced of it as well. And I think that I know that I can do that. We've been through a lot together, me and these kids. So number two about things that I've heard today. So this one was when I don't know what to say to my kids, I simply tell them what I'm learning about myself. And this really resonated with me because I've always talked with my kids, even when they were younger, I've always talked with them as if they were my little BFFs. And there were things that I didn't completely divulge to them, but for the most part, I've always been an open book, and that's because I was learning how to be a parent just while they, at the same time that they were learning how to be a human being, and so we were in it together, and we are still in it together, and the best way I knew how last night to respond to my daughter was to summarize what I'm learning about myself. And what I have concluded today is that that wasn't enough. What I talked to her about yesterday wasn't enough. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So, the next thing that I heard today was to bring your kids along with you in your emotional growth. Um, these these podcasts are where I articulate my emotional growth. more so, I think, than anywhere else in my life. I come to these podcasts in the evening, right before I go to bed, and I'm like coming clean on everything that was building up inside of me for the day. And so my kids don't listen to this podcast. I think my daughter does sometimes, but um, I I pretty sure my son doesn't listen at all. I think he had started, but the reason why is because it's painful for them to listen to it. It's a reminder on a daily basis that their mom had a stroke. And um and I get that. It's hard, it's hard. And I'll talk about that in a little bit too. Um and then the next thing, your kids still need and expect you to be a parent um, when they're little and when they're in their 20s. What do they need? And they really don't understand what's going on, whether they're young or old children. They don't know what's going on for the most part, unless they're doctors, unless they're adult children doctors. They probably aren't terribly clear on what happened and what's going on because they're not sitting at the doctor's appointments with me. You know, they never even saw my MRI pictures to see what part of my brain had died. I hate saying that. That part of me is dead. Um, but they didn't see that, and they're not coming to vision therapy, and they're not learning at the same rate that I'm learning. And it's my job to bring them with me, and I'm trying to think about, I still need to, although I'm bringing them on this emotional growth journey with me, I need to still be considerate of their emotional growth because it's different than mine. It's younger than mine. It's at a more tender age than mine. And so I'm responsible. And thank God I'm still able to do all the things that I can. I mean, that's the first time I've said that in 4 months, right? Thank God I'm able to do the things that I can do so that I can be a parent and help guide them through my recovery, you know? And I feel like some people would think, well, they need to help you. They need to support your recovery. Of course. But I really think that this is a family journey. This is our family that needs to recover. It's not just me. And I've been very much focused on the me part. Um, so, something to think about. So, I'm going to talk more about, again, my kids as young adults and how I may be able to prepare them for us growing together in recovery. I've been so hyper focused on my new identity. I've been talking about it a lot over the past few days, and I haven't had a lot of conversations with my kids about their mom having a new version 3.0, particularly because I'm figuring it out as I go. So it's partially because they are also in this phase of their life in their young, early 20s, where they are being molded now too. They are assuming their new independence, that identity. And while they're doing that, I have been making it a point to not upset that process. I want them to be reasonably anchored to home and to their mommy, but I don't want them to be stressfully anchored to home because they're worried about me. And clearly, my adult kids have unmet needs to cope with my stroke. And I want to do something about that. Now that I know that something needs to be done, that I need to take an action. So here are some actionable, some guidance, some actionable guidance for how to help children of a stroke survivor cope, no matter what their age. I realize for the younger kids, it may come in the form of drawing pictures and doing activities together, while older kids can be, a lot more conversation. So both of my kids cope with everything that falls on their plate differently, figuratively and literally. When they were kids, they treated unknown food on their plates completely differently. Anyway, that's beside the point. So we have had a lot of adversity in our family, and my kids dealt with the suicide of their uncle. And this is, I personally went through a phase of being really angry with that uncle for having done that to my kids. We all go through different emotions and everybody deals differently. And at first I was devastated. I went through a lot of feelings of trauma, and so on. And then I had gotten really angry because my kids had to deal with something that I would never want them to have to deal with. That's obvious. Again, I'm trying to protect my kids. But they both dealt with that event very differently. And they both dealt with the loss of their grandfather, who we lost him abruptly as well. And they were so close with him. He was just an amazing grandfather. This is their dad's dad. And I really feel like him and my son were like BFFs. And so both of the kids handled that very differently. They both dealt with my divorce from their father very differently. And they both dealt with us moving right when COVID started. We moved from the house that they grew up in, and they both dealt with that very differently. So there's one of them tends to be devastated, be absolutely devastated, shows all of those emotions, and then seems to come out of it a little faster than the other one, who doesn't really show a lot of that, doesn't reveal the devastation. And so it's really difficult for me to be able to see when that child actually heals or starts to feel better, because I don't get to see the progress, while the other one will cry and cry and cry until they stop crying. And then from where I sit, it looks like they're starting to feel better. So of course I don't have the ability to see what's inside of either of them, and it could be nothing like what I see. We only see what other people want us to see. And I think that that one of my kids, the one that keeps things more on the inside, I my perception is that some of that is because of protecting me from having to worry. So anyway, what is my point? What is my point? They're both going to deal with it differently, and I just need to acknowledge that, and I may need to customize my approach for each of them. But here are some of the recommendations that I found and that I think I can apply, and I will. So, number one, I need to call my children more and talk about myself. So, I need to create a routine and talk about what is happening. And I've been doing the opposite so that I don't stress them out. And in the research that I did today, I found that it is normal that I'm not calling them and talking about myself because as a parent, once again, I want to protect them from painful situations. But from their perspective, without communication from me, they are going to write their own stories about what's going on, you know? And this causes more sadness, unnecessary sadness, and fear, and concern, and confusion, and uncertainty. And I'm quite certain that that they are afraid that I'm going to die. That's what I feel like they are thinking right now, that I'm going to die. And they must be thinking that because I was afraid I was going to die, you know? And it's only just over the past month that my fear about all of a sudden dying started to subside. Um, when I first had the stroke, I've talked about this. I had this overwhelming fear of just everything turned upside down for me in my mind about my whole perception of life turned upside down when I had my stroke. And then it was just even more validated when a childhood friend that I grew up with and knew my entire life since fifth grade died suddenly from the disease of alcoholism. And that just reaffirmed everything that I was so fearful of. So from June 2021 through, through 2022, really, I just could not shake it. I could not shake this uncomfortable. I didn't even feel like I was a part of the world anymore. I just felt like I was on my own little planet and that my life just wasn't what I thought it was anymore. Um, that I was going to grow up till I was 100. I was adamant I'm going to grow up to be 100. Well, I'm getting that back again, that I'm going to grow up to be 100. But over the past several months, I started questioning that again because I thought I had another stroke. That's how bad my symptoms got. I thought I had another stroke. Well, good news is I didn't have another stroke. I just somehow I broke myself, and I regressed in my symptoms, but nothing, no new damage has occurred to me. And as I continue to navigate life with the symptoms that I am experiencing, it's what they say about getting used to your new normal. Um, and that's what I'm doing to an extent. I want my new normal to not include headaches and nausea and pain. And that's what my doctors will figure that out. So I think that as my fears have increased and decreased, and then increased again and decreased around death and all that yucky stuff, I didn't talk about it. I didn't talk about it with anybody, I don't think. Uh, uh, and and it's important that I do, that I talk to my children most of all about it. So then number 2, ask your kids to write down questions. And I thought this was a really good idea. And it doesn't mean like I'm going to have my kids listen to this podcast. I'm going to send it to them after I record it today, which I never ever do. So, but since it's for them and about them, I'm going to send it to them. So writing down a list of questions is not the same as us asking for your Christmas list. What I'm hoping is that they will write down, as they think of them, things that are on their mind. I spoke yesterday about this amazingly hilarious author who wrote the book Bird by Bird, and how she had an index card, always has an index card in her back pocket. Do that. Like, tell your kids to have an index card in their pocket at all times. And when they have a thought, if they're at school bus age, if they're sitting on the school bus and they think of something that maybe makes them nervous or scared, or just think, well, wait a minute, what is she doing when, fill in the blank? Ask them to write it down, and then they can ask you. And this is an effort to get things out of their heads and into the universe. Just like all the other techniques that I talk about, where I'm always like, however you can get that shit out of your head, it makes space for the good stuff to come into your head. Get the bad stuff out so that the good stuff can fill in those gaps. And if you can get it out into the universe, write it down on a piece of paper, then it's something tangible and we can look at it and we can talk about it. If you leave it in your head, there is nothing we can do about it. There's absolutely nothing we as a family can do about it. So with my adult children, I can share with them how I'm healing my mental state. And although they don't listen to the podcast, I have the ability to call them and bring that healing, that mental health, bring that to them over the phone. Whatever it is I figure out that I need to do for myself, why am I not sharing that with them constantly? Like, I'm almost ashamed that I have not done this, that I have not addressed what they must be feeling. I just feel terrible about that, which is going to make them feel terrible that I feel terrible about it. But, we're all doing our best. And it's when one of them calls me and talks about how they feel that I understand that we need to deal with this as a family better. We need to get better. And that's okay. We have so much love and appreciation for each other that's what we can do. And that's so wonderful that I have that relationship. So next, talk about my frustrations and daily life, including what I'm doing for myself. So there's a little bit of accountability here with this one, to check in with my kids and say, because they're going to be like, well, what are you doing today? How are you feeling? And I can say, yes, I'm doing everything that I should and that I can. And most of all, I'm resting. And if I find myself telling them what I did that day and I'm running out of breath because there are so many things I did that day, then I'm holding myself accountable there. I need to slow down a little bit. And they are uh, close enough with me and brave enough with me to say, Mom, maybe you should rest. So I'm going to do that too. And then the last one that I have here is to ask family to reach out to your kids. So I don't know. What I know is that this weekend my daughter is going to visit my son um, for Halloween. And I know the following weekend, my niece is going to, and her friend are going to visit my son. So there is some, that's always comforting to know that they're going to be together. And I love that they love each other like that. But I don't know how much the other cousins or my brother and my sister or my mom or my dad and my stepmom. I don't know if any of them are reaching out to my kids, but I'm going to ask them to. So, kids, when you listen to this, you're also going to be getting more interaction from family because that's what we all need. And if I'm doing my job as a mom, I'm going to make sure that you all are supported in every possible way that you can. And when you're supported, that helps all of us, because I'm getting the support that I need from doctors and specialists and family but I think you need it more. You don't. I almost said you need it more, and I don't mean you need it more than me. You need to have more support. Again, because our whole family is going through this together. It's not just me, and it's not just you all out starting your lives and your mom is back at home. Your poor sick mom, as my boyfriend always says, to make you feel guilty, is not just at home suffering. This is something that we're gonna do together, and that's just gonna make us all closer. So I love you guys so much. So thank you everybody for listening to me and my kids bond this evening. I'll talk to you tomorrow.